Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. 1. General introduction to the book. Wild Dark Shore is a climate fiction novel set on Shearwater Island, a remote outpost between Tasmania and Antarctica. Here, the Salt family, comprised of Dominic and his 3 children, manages the United Nations Global Seed Vault. Confronted by the effects of climate change, melting ice, rising sea levels, and increasingly violent storms, they are tasked with selecting the most vital seeds to preserve before evacuating the island within a few weeks. The story is structured through multiple perspectives: Dominic, his children Raff, Fun, and Orly, as well as Rowan, a mysterious woman washed ashore, whose presence adds layers of suspense, tension, and emotional complexity to the narrative. About the author, Charlotte McConaghy. Charlotte McConaghy lives in Sydney, Australia, and holds a master's degree in screenwriting. Before gaining recognition with her adult novels, she wrote science fiction and fantasy, SFF. She rose to literary acclaim with Migrations, named a Time Best Book of 2020 and adapted into a forthcoming film, and Once There Were Wolves, a New York Times bestseller. McConaghy has become known for her unique blend of environmental literature and romantic thrillers. Her work delves deeply into the bond between humans and nature, incorporating wild landscapes, emotional connection, and the theme of healing. In interviews, she has said she approaches writing instinctively, conducting thorough research into the natural world, especially bird migrations and the ocean, to bring realism and authenticity to her stories. Main character setting. Main character, Amal. Amara, the portrait of inner rupture and resilience. Amal, also referred to as Amara in some narrative threads, is not just the protagonist of the story, but the emotional compass through which readers experience the journey of loss, exile, and slow healing, a life marked by absence. Motherless childhood. Amal's early loss of her mother creates a void that shapes her sense of identity. The emotional gap is never truly filled, causing her to grow up with a persistent sense of abandonment. Aloof father. Her father, emotionally distant and unable to express love or provide comfort, contributes further to her internal fragility. Their relationship is defined more by silence than by connection. Final break. When he dies, she is not only orphaned but spiritually untethered, left with no emotional anchor, no place to call home. Emotional isolation and search for self. Amal's psychological state is one of disorientation and numbness. Her decision to leave everything behind and venture into nature stems from a deep desire to escape human noise and relational complexity, test her limits in raw solitude, reconnect with the parts of herself she lost long ago. She is a woman on the edge, neither fully broken nor fully whole, who finds herself not through therapy or dialogue, but through endurance, silence, and the wild sea. Setting. Nature as both place and symbol. The coastal landscape in Wild Dark Shore is not just scenery. It acts as a character in itself, embodying the emotional and existential themes of the novel. Remote and harsh, yet healing, the location is isolated, with rocky cliffs, salt-laced winds, and restless tides, a place untouched by civilization and thus devoid of human judgment. This wilderness mirrors Amal's inner world, jagged, unprotected, ever-shifting. Yet it also offers a paradoxical comfort. There is honesty in the sea's violence, clarity in its indifference. The sea as metaphor, the wild, untamed sea stands in contrast to the emotional repression of her past life. It reflects her grief and fear, but also her capacity for transformation. The ocean does not hold back or pretend, and through it, Amal is invited to confront her own raw truths, waves crashing on cliffs, storms gathering over water. These are physical echoes of her inner turbulence. But as the sea calms, so does she. the space of rediscovery, nature becomes sanctuary, mirror, and witness, removed from the structures of modern life. No cities, no distractions. Amal is stripped down to her essentials. In this quiet brutality, she finds clarity. The loneliness of the coast is not emptiness, it is invitation. An invitation to rebuild her sense of self, on her own terms. Interplay between character and setting. McConaghy excels at weaving character and setting together until they feel inseparable. Amal is the sea, unpredictable, aching, and in search of something permanent. The landscape is not backdrop, but emotional terrain, guiding her through rage, surrender, and healing. Their interaction is what propels the novel forward, not plot, but this gradual dance between a woman and the wilderness she lets in. Three. Beginning, pain and the search for solace, the quiet funeral, a symbolic ending and beginning. The story begins with a silent, almost hollow funeral at Amal's coastal home. It is not marked by crowded grieving or dramatic tears, it is muted, internalized, and heavy with unspoken emotion. Her father's death serves not just as a familial loss, but a turning point, an existential rupture. The weathered seaside house, once a place of refuge or memory, now feels foreign, empty, and suffocating, a vessel of unresolved history rather than comfort. This moment signals the end of her passive life. She can no longer stay within the shadow of what was left unsaid or undone. Grief as a catalyst, not just a weight. Amal's grief is multi-layered. She is mourning not only her father's death, but the emotional absence he represented in life. She mourns a mother she never got to know, and a childhood of silence, where love was distant and comfort unreachable. More than loss, what she carries is a deep ache of incompletion, a life built on unanswered questions and emotional isolation. But McConaghy doesn't present grief as mere stagnation. Instead, it acts as a burning need to break away. To seek something that feels real, raw, and restorative. A soul haunted and drifting, McConaghy paints Amal not as broken, but haunted, by memories, regrets, absences, and the quiet trauma of never being understood. She is, searching, but uncertain what she's even looking for, drifting, but beginning to wake up, afraid, but unable to stay frozen. This inner tension is what makes her journey so compelling. She isn't running away in panic, but seeking through surrender, willing to lose her footing in order to possibly find new ground. Solitude is self-confrontation. The wild offers no answers, but that is what makes it sacred. Amal's decision to embrace solitude in nature is less about serenity and more about exposure. She wants to be stripped down, to learn what remains when everything else is gone. In the stillness and violence of the coast, she hopes to remember what it feels like to feel, to grieve, to ache, and ultimately, to heal. This is not healing as a gentle process. It is raw, feral, and earned. For, a journey into the sea. The self, setting sail, a radical act of solitude and will. When Amal rents a small boat and embarks alone into the sea, it is far more than a physical departure, it is a spiritual leap. She is not simply sailing toward a destination, but into the raw terrain of the self. No map, no companion, no clear goal. Her journey is driven by instinct and emotional necessity, not logic. This act of courage marks her first true rebellion against a life shaped by silence and loss. The open water becomes a space where she can finally exist without expectation or judgment, a place of radical freedom. It is a moment that's both terrifying and exhilarating. She is utterly alone, yet perhaps, for the first time, completely herself. Nature as a mirror, chaos meets chaos. The sea is not gentle, it meets Amal with violent waves, merciless winds, and sudden storms. But instead of being her enemy, nature becomes a mirror for what is already inside her. The surging waves reflect her emotional overwhelm, grief, confusion, anger, and unresolved pain. The shifting tides parallel her wavering sense of self, sometimes grounded, sometimes lost. The blinding rain and wind represent not external danger, but the storm of memories and emotions she's carried for years. McConaghy uses these elemental forces not just for suspense, but as metaphors for Amal's inner transformation. Nature as a teacher, learning through surrender. As Amal is tested physically and emotionally, nature also becomes her teacher. Unlike people in her life who ignored or suppressed emotion, the sea demands her full presence. She must learn to read the wind, respect the current, respond to sudden change, lessons that echo what she must also do internally. There are no shortcuts. Just as she cannot tame the sea, she cannot rush her own healing. Over time, she develops trust in her instincts, in her resilience, in the rhythms of the natural world. This isn't a hero's journey in the traditional sense. She doesn't conquer the sea, she learns how to move with it. In doing so, she begins to rebuild trust in herself. The blurred line between fear and courage. What McConaghy explores so beautifully in this chapter of Amal's journey is that, courage is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to act while afraid. Amal begins her journey in a state of survival and uncertainty. She's unsure of her purpose, her strength, her future, but through each moment of danger or discomfort, she proves to herself that she can endure. The sea strips her down to her essence. What remains is not someone fearless, but someone strong enough to feel and continue anyway. This is the heart of the transformation, not to get over the past, but to embrace it as part of who she is becoming. Spiritual undertone. The sea as soul space. There's also a quiet spiritual current running through this stage of the book. The sea becomes a kind of sacred space, a watery temple where Amal confronts and releases ghosts of her past. Each crashing wave is like a baptism, painful but purifying. Each moment of silence on the water is a meditation. She is no longer defined by the house she left or the grief she carried, but by the breath she takes here and now. Five, fateful encounter, unexpected connection, a chance meeting, but not by chance. When Amal arrives at a remote island, weary, weather-worn, and emotionally raw, she doesn't expect to find another human soul, let alone one who will mirror her deepest struggles. Yet she meets Jonas, a man who, like her, has retreated from the world, not in defeat, but in quiet surrender. Their meeting feels almost fated, two strangers in a forgotten place, two lives marked by grief, solitude, and survival, two hearts carrying unspoken weight. But what could have been a brief, guarded interaction unfolds into something profound and slowly transformative. Jonas, a mirror and a contrast. Jonas is the emotional opposite of Amal in many ways. Where she is stormy, searching, and restless, he is grounded, silent, and calm. Where she is just beginning her journey into solitude, he has lived with it for years, embracing the rhythm of tides and silence like old friends. He doesn't preach or push, his way of being is presence itself. But underneath his quiet is a man with his own scars, wounds not loudly spoken, but felt through stillness, glances, and the gentle way he handles both Amal and the world around him, his reverence for nature, his steady hands, his ability to find contentment in simplicity. all of it intrigues Amal. She is drawn to his peace, even if she doesn't yet understand it. Connection through tension and tenderness. The early conversations between Amal and Jonas are sparse, cautious, and sometimes awkward, like strangers feeling the edges of their own emotional limits, marked by shared silences that speak louder than words, built on respect and restraint, not emotional outbursts. But slowly, something shifts. Amal begins to let down her guard. Jonas starts to share small truths, revealing bits of his pain and past. They do not fix each other. Instead, they offer each other space to simply be, without judgment or demand. What grows between them is not dramatic love, but something more sacred: recognition. A knowing. A shared ache. Jonas as an emotional anchor. As Amal continues her journey, physically demanding and emotionally volatile, Jonas becomes her anchor, a safe harbor in the chaos of grief, a still point when storms, real and internal, rise, a companion who does not ask for explanation, but who listens with presence. He does not save her, he simply stands beside her, which, in the world Amal comes from, is a radical act of care. Through him, Amal begins to trust again, not just others, but her own instincts. Understand that healing doesn't have to be loud or fast. It can be slow, tender, and deeply human. Experience love in a new form, not possessive or dramatic, but rooted, steady, and honest. The symbolism of their bond. The relationship between Amal and Jonas is not just personal, it reflects the novel's broader themes, the healing power of connection. Just as the wild restores Amal's body, Jonas helps restore her spirit, emotional stillness. In a world of noise, their shared silence becomes a kind of language, intimate and unspoken. Kinship in pain. Their bond is forged not in perfection, but in mutual brokenness, which becomes a foundation for trust. McConaghy doesn't romanticize their connection. It is flawed, slow, and full of hesitation. But that's what makes it real. It respects the pace of healing, the boundaries of solitude, and the beauty of growing together without losing oneself. Six. Climax. The wrath of nature, a fight for survival. Deep analysis. The storm is emotional and physical climax. The violent storm that strikes one night is not just a plot twist, but the emotional and symbolic climax of the novel. Towering waves, howling winds, and relentless rain embody the rage and chaos that have long been suppressed within Amal. Nature unleashes its fury, mirroring the inner violence she has tried to outrun: grief, guilt, helplessness. This scene is McConaghy at her most visceral. Language becomes elemental, stripped of ornamentation. Every second is survival. Every movement, a battle between giving up and going on. A test of trust and togetherness. In this moment of crisis, Amal and Jonas no longer have time for emotional hesitation. Their survival depends on absolute trust. Jonas shouts instructions. Amal follows without resistance. Amal grips the rudder. Jonas steadies the sail. They move in sync, not as two strangers, but as one entity fighting to stay alive. There is no declaration of love, no romantic climax. Instead, what they share is deeper and wordless, the knowledge that they would die for each other if they had to. This is the true solidifying of their bond, not in comfort, but in chaos. Nature's dual role, destroyer and purifier. The storm is not simply destruction, it is cleansing. It forces surrender, to the sea, to each other, and to the truth of vulnerability. What remains after is not wreckage, but clarity. Seven. Rebirth, reflection, acceptance. deep analysis, the calm after the storm, a new dawn. As the storm clears and dawn rises over a quiet sea, a profound transformation begins. The boat, though damaged, is still afloat, symbolizing resilience and rebirth. Amal and Jonas begin to repair not just the vessel, but themselves. They fall into a rhythm of shared simplicity, fishing together. A gesture of providing and patience, cooking by firelight, intimacy without words, watching the sunset, a shared silence that no longer feels empty. These are mundane acts, yet McConaghy infuses them with spiritual significance. They are symbols of a life rebuilt from wreckage, not through grand gestures, but through presence. Acceptance. The shift from resistance to integration. The Amal who emerges after the storm is not radically different, but she is quietly changed. She stops resisting her grief and lets it coexist with peace. She no longer sees her past as something to erase, but as a chapter that shaped her survival. She realizes healing is not about forgetting, but about carrying memory without drowning in it. This marks her emotional rebirth. The storm tore down what was fragile, and now, she rebuilds. Stronger, clearer, more grounded, hope through earthly rituals. What once felt impossible, joy, safety, and belonging, begins to feel real. Not in some future fantasy, but here, in a fish passed from one hand to another, in the flicker of firelight against wind-chapped skin, in the quiet understanding that she is not alone anymore. Eight. Emotional peak open ending, a quiet yet profound resolution. More than love, the birth of chosen family. As Amal and Jonas prepare to leave the island behind, they share their most honest moment, a conversation not built on declarations, but on quiet truth. They have moved beyond strangers, beyond even lovers. What they now share is deep loyalty, emotional understanding, and a bond that does not need a name. They become chosen family, a term that signifies love built not from blood, but from shared pain, trust, and the willingness to remain. In a world where both have lost so much, this commitment to stay carries enormous emotional weight. Amal's decision, choosing the wild over the world. Amal chooses not to return to the city, to the noise, the loneliness masked as normalcy, the life that once hollowed her out. Instead, she chooses presence, authenticity, and the slow rhythm of nature. This is a radical act of self-care and healing, not running, but rooting. The open ending, footprints and futures. The novel ends with Amal and Jonas walking toward the sea. Their footprints in the sand slowly fading behind them. It is a symbolic gesture. They are leaving the past behind, not erasing it, but allowing it to rest. The open ending is intentional. McConaghy doesn't tie everything in a bow. Instead, she invites readers to imagine what kind of life Amal and Jonas will build, how healing continues, slowly and imperfectly, what freedom really means when it's chosen, not forced. It's not a happy ending, it's a hopeful one, grounded in reality and silence and sea air. Nine. Deep themes. Author's message, the heart beneath the story. Charlotte McConaghy, as in her previous works, Migrations, Once There Were Wolves, uses the natural world not as a background but as a spiritual counterpart to the emotional narrative. In Wild Dark Shore, her message is clear yet never didactic. Healing from trauma, you cannot outrun pain, you must walk through it, storm and all, to emerge stronger and softer on the other side. Inner strength. Strength is not shown through toughness, but through vulnerability, resilience, and the courage to begin again after loss. Nature as medicine, the wilderness does not pity or punish. The sea, wind, cliffs, they reflect. Listen, challenge, and restore. Nature offers something rare, a place where nothing is expected of you but to be real. Chosen family. Family is not biology. It is those who see you, stand by you, and walk beside you in silence and storm alike. Jonas becomes this for Amal, not by fixing her, but by staying. 10. Why you should read this story, a quiet masterpiece. 1. Lush, poetic prose, McConaghy's writing sings with emotional weight and natural rhythm. She paints the sea with words, letting each wave crash through the reader's chest. It's introspective yet visceral, balancing beauty with brutality. 2. Balanced pacing, one moment you're in the heart of a raging storm, the next, you're quietly watching two people cook fish over a campfire. This rhythm mirrors the way trauma moves, chaos followed by stillness, breakdown followed by breath. 3. Open ending, the lack of resolution is not a flaw, it's a gift. It gives the story life beyond the page, allowing readers to imagine healing in their own way, on their own terms. 4. Emotional richness, Wild Dark Shore is not just a romance, it's not just survival fiction, it's a tender, powerful story about what it means to be human, to be wounded, to be lost, to be found again through love, nature, and quiet strength. Conclusion. Wild Dark Shore is a story about transformation, a journey where the past becomes a stepping stone to the future. Through the image of the deep, mysterious sea and broken yet brave characters, McConaghy leads us from grief to rebirth, from solitude to connection. It's a book that reveals new emotional layers each time you return to it.